The leaders of the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are meeting for their 6th annual summit. And while they may have differences in political systems, levels of economic growth, culture, and demographics, the 5 countries represent almost 3 billion people, about 40% of the world, with a combined GDP of $16 trillion last year, and an estimated $4 trillion in foreign reserves. That's 18% of the world economy. So that might explain why they're gathering and trying to set aside their differences in favor of a proposed BRICS bank to rival the IMF and World Bank, or how partners like Russia try to overcome stiff sanctions imposed by the West over Ukraine. Later, we'll talk to a leading expert in China, a veteran Brazilian journalist, and an American scholar. But we begin in Fortaleza, Brazil, with CCTV's Stephen Gibbs. So, Stephen, what's the headline coming out of the summit so far?
Oh, I think undoubtedly the headline is the formation of this new development bank. It means that the BRICS is not just a grouping with a name, it's now got a name, its name on an institution. It was, by all accounts, a pretty close-run thing to get this properly signed off. The problem being, where was the bank going to be headquartered, who was going to be its president? And there was a long negotiation right up to the last minute, we're hearing from Brazilian diplomats, between India and China on that. The final decision, it's going to be headquartered in Shanghai, and India get a sort of consolation prize in a way. They get the first presidency of the bank for the next 5 years. And the way that deal was achieved, we're hearing, is that Brazil were initially going to get the presidency of the bank, but they stood down and India took it over.
So what is the main objective of this bank?
Well, its objective really is to provide funding, development and infrastructure funding to the BRICS nations and to the developing world. It will get into operation, they're hoping, by 2016. It will have its first regional headquarters, apart from the headquarters in Shanghai. It will have its sort of regional base in South Africa, which could be a sign that some of that infrastructure money will be going to Africa. But apart from the sort of practicalities about what it's going to do, it's a big, big symbolic move. There are plenty of people in the BRICS movement and in the developing world who say that the World Bank, despite its name, is really a tool of American power and American diplomacy. And this is a rival, you could say, or a counterweight to that, to represent the developing world and, as you said in your introduction, half the world's population.
Stephen, China's economy, of course, is bigger than all the other BRICS members combined and represents the bulk of the group's foreign trade. Does that translate perhaps into more clout for China?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been a concern of the BRICS nations, that maybe the same mistakes, effectively, of the World Bank will be repeated when you've got one member with absolutely the dominant economy. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why this has taken so long for them to sign off. They've been talking about this for 4 years, and the problem, the negotiation, has been what role will China take and what role will the others take and what will the balance be? And the deal really has been to split it 5 ways. So initial $50 billion capital, $10 billion from each of the 5 BRICS nations, this rotating presidency. There's also a head of the board of governors from South Africa, head of the board of directors from Brazil. So they are trying to make it a bank for all the BRICS developing nations and not just have any one just because of its economic clout having all the power.
Stephen, let's talk about Russia and the sanctions by the West over the crisis in Ukraine. As he headed to the summit, Vladimir Putin called for, quote, and I'm again quoting him here, a system of measures that would help prevent the harassment of countries that do not agree with some foreign policy decisions made by the United States and their allies, but would promote civilized dialogue on all points at issue based on mutual respect. Has there been any move or involvement in that direction to help Russia ease the burden of these sanctions?
Yeah, I don't think that the BRICS Development Bank will have any direct role on the sort of financial situation in terms of sanctions against Russia, but a political role it certainly is playing. I mean, this is good for President Putin. Here he is, you know, with the world trying to sanction him saying that Russia is being harassed by the world. And he can say, well, hang on, we are a fifth part of a major new $100 billion development bank to help the developing world. So it's a way of saying to the West, and of course particularly the United States, that we can do our own thing. And the Russian media have been certainly playing on that in the aftermath to the deal that was signed last night.
And Stephen, quickly, what else can we expect as this summit wraps up?
Well, the BRICS leaders are now heading off to Brasilia, where they will be meeting, and they have been meeting, regional Latin American leaders. And there's another dimension to that. If you look at the BRICS makeup, they're all want to be or are leaders in their own regions. And Brazil is therefore seeing itself as the host of the BRICS in Latin America, and the host that can present these major world presidents to the other Latin American leaders.
CCTV, Stephen Gibbs, thank you so much.